History rarely changes because of perfect ideas. It changes because ordinary people find extraordinary uses for them. In October 2013, the FBI celebrated what many believed was the end of Bitcoin. They had just shut down the world's most notorious online marketplace. Its founder was arrested. Millions of dollars in Bitcoin were seized. Headlines declared that Bitcoin's biggest use case was gone. To many, this was proof that the experiment had failed. But something unexpected happened. Bitcoin didn't disappear. It kept growing. Years later, it would become one of the most valuable financial assets in history. So the real story isn't about how Silk Road ended. It's about why Bitcoin survived. And to understand that, we have to go back to where it all began. In 2011, Bitcoin was still an experiment. Most people had never heard of it. It wasn't traded on major exchanges. It wasn't discussed on television. And it certainly wasn't considered an investment. To the outside world, Bitcoin looked like an obscure digital project created by anonymous programmers. But beneath the surface of the internet, something unusual was taking shape. A website called Silk Road quietly opened its virtual doors. Unlike Amazon or eBay, it didn't rely on banks, credit card companies, or traditional payment systems. It operated through the Tor network, allowing users to browse anonymously. Every transaction was settled with Bitcoin. For the first time, thousands of people had a practical reason to acquire and use this new digital currency. Whether the marketplace itself was legal or illegal is only part of the story. What mattered for Bitcoin was something far more important. People were no longer buying Bitcoin simply because they believed in the technology. They were buying it because they needed it. And that simple shift would change Bitcoin's future forever. At first glance, Silk Road looked like just another online marketplace. But behind every purchase was a problem that traditional finance couldn't solve. Credit cards required banks. Banks required identities. And identities meant transactions could be monitored, reversed, or blocked. Silk Road was built around anonymity. It needed a payment system that worked without asking permission from any bank, government, or company. Bitcoin offered exactly that. Every payment was sent directly between users through a decentralized network. No bank approved the transaction. No payment processor could freeze an account. No company stood in the middle. For the first time, money could move across the internet almost as freely as information itself. That didn't make Bitcoin good or bad. It simply revealed what the technology was capable of. Silk Road became the first large-scale demonstration that a decentralized digital currency could function in the real world. And once that lesson had been learned, it could never be unlearned. As more people discovered Silk Road, demand for Bitcoin began to grow. Many users were buying Bitcoin for the first time, not as an investment, but as a way to participate in an online marketplace that operated differently from anything before it. This was a turning point. Until then, Bitcoin had mostly been discussed by programmers, cryptographers, and a small community of technology enthusiasts. Now it was being used in real transactions every single day. Wallets were created. Coins changed hands. Exchanges slowly expanded to meet the growing demand. For the first time, Bitcoin was supporting an economy where people earned it, spent it, traded it, and valued it beyond theory. Not everyone agreed with how Silk Road operated, but the technology itself was proving something remarkable. A decentralized digital currency could coordinate economic activity between strangers across the internet without relying on a central authority. That realization reached far beyond a single website. Entrepreneurs noticed, developers noticed, investors noticed. Bitcoin was no longer just an experiment hidden on internet forums. It had become impossible for the world to ignore. By 2013, Silk Road had become impossible for law enforcement to ignore. The marketplace had attracted hundreds of thousands of users from around the world and facilitated millions of dollars in transactions. Federal investigators spent years piecing together digital evidence, following server trails, online aliases, and tiny mistakes left behind by its anonymous founder. That founder was Ross Ulbricht. In October 2013, inside a public library in San Francisco, FBI agents made their move. They waited until Ulbricht was actively using his laptop. Within seconds, he was arrested before he could lock or encrypt the device. At the same time, Silk Road's servers were seized. The website disappeared overnight. Authorities also confiscated a large amount of Bitcoin connected to the investigation. Around the world, headlines declared the same conclusion. Bitcoin's biggest real-world application was over. If Silk Road had driven Bitcoin's growth, then Bitcoin itself couldn't survive. It sounded like a reasonable prediction. But history would soon prove otherwise. After Silk Road was shut down, uncertainty spread quickly. Bitcoin's price fell sharply in the days that followed. Critics argued that if its largest real-world use case had disappeared, demand for Bitcoin would disappear as well. To many observers, the conclusion seemed obvious. Bitcoin had been an interesting experiment, but now its future looked uncertain. Yet beneath the headlines, something important had changed. Thousands of people now understood how Bitcoin worked. Developers continued improving the software. New exchanges continued opening. Businesses began exploring whether digital currency could be used for completely legal purposes, from online payments to international transfers. The network itself never stopped. Every 10 minutes, another block was added. Another transaction was confirmed. Another user joined. Bitcoin had never depended on a single website. It depended on a decentralized network that continued operating exactly as it had been designed. Silk Road was gone, but Bitcoin kept moving forward. Looking back, Silk Road was never the reason Bitcoin survived. It was simply the first event that tested whether Bitcoin could survive the loss of its biggest user. The answer surprised almost everyone. The marketplace disappeared. The founder went to prison. Millions of dollars in Bitcoin were seized. Yet the network continued exactly as it always had. No emergency meeting was called. No central authority stepped in. No one needed permission to keep using Bitcoin. That was the true innovation. Bitcoin wasn't built to depend on a company. It wasn't built to depend on a government. And it certainly wasn't built to depend on a single website. It was built to survive. In the years that followed, new exchanges emerged. Institutional investors entered the market. Public companies added Bitcoin to their balance sheets. Countries began debating how digital assets should be regulated. None of those chapters would erase Silk Road from Bitcoin's history, but they prove something even more important. A technology can outgrow its first use case. And sometimes, the moment everyone believes an idea is finished is the moment its real story is only beginning. Silk Road will always be a controversial chapter in Bitcoin's history, but history is rarely defined by where an idea begins. It's defined by where that idea goes next. Bitcoin's first real economy may have emerged in the shadows, but its future would be written in full view of the world. And that story is far from over.